What's up, Internet? We are here with a very special, non-standard episode of this non-standard mini-series that I'm continuing to do for some reason. Actually, I keep getting games that I don't know much about kind of falling into my lap, and I figured, first impressions, why not? Although today, it's a little special because we're actually going to talk about a game I know a little bit about. The date is currently September 29th, 2017. The Super Nintendo Classic just went on sale today, and, that's what I'm playing, obviously. And I did it for two reasons. Okay, three. First of all, Secret of Mana. I don't need an excuse to have another copy of Secret of Mana. It's a very good game. It's a very special game to me. Second of all, Earthbound. Because that gives me an excuse not to turn on my Wii U for another, 2 years or whatever. But finally, there's one really big reason I especially wanted this, and it's not just because I kind of got the NES Classic, and I'll talk about that later, and it was kind of cool, and I like the Super Nintendo even more than the NES, but, this one little game called Star Fox 2. And what's interesting about this game, as the box proclaims, this game was never released. In fact, if you look up Star Fox 2, the most accurate representation of a second Star Fox game would, of course, be Star Fox 64. Unless we're, of course, thinking of the Atari 2600 Star Fox, in which case it's the original game. But the point is, Star Fox 2 was a game that was created about 20 years ago, and, well, for the first time ever, it's now officially made public on the SNES Classic. And I want to go into a bit of history with it, and, aside from history, just see what this game is about and show you what it is in case you don't know what this game is. Because it's definitely interesting and a little bit different from the original Star Fox. Now the thing is, it's locked. For whatever reason, the 21st game on this 20-game compilation mini-console needs to be unlocked by playing the first level of Star Fox, so we're going to do that. I figure that's going to take about 2 minutes. I've actually never played the original Star Fox, so this is going to be exciting. But let's go through this, and I'll talk about how I got my SNES Classic. And why I wanted it so bad, aside from this. I mean, first of all, I got the NES Classic as a Christmas present. My brother works at a place that was selling them, and his manager had reserved one, but they had to drop it, and he picked it up immediately and got it to me, which was an incredibly cool Christmas present. Shouts to my kid brother for that. It was the second coolest Christmas present I've ever received, especially because I don't get a lot of Christmas presents that are games or anything. My parents were always pretty strict about me never getting games growing up.
Good luck.
But that was a pretty big present for me. And I love the Super Nintendo. So getting this was a no-brainer, but unfortunately, for whatever reason, this was a premium item, so my brother could not reserve one for me. He could do it for a Switch, and he did at one point, but couldn't do this, so I had to stand in line. And he told me, okay, shop opens up at 9:30, so get here about 9-ish, and we'll get you one. I get there at 9, and it turns out there is a line that had started since 8 p.m. the previous night. So yeah, that's kind of scary. It's not a big line, mind you, there's like 50 people in front of me, but in fact there was exactly 51 people in front of me. I had a number to prove it. But, I went out, and I got my SNES Classic, and I looked behind the counter as I picked it up. It looked like they had about 300 behind the counter, and it turns out I got a lot more lucky than I thought I did, because when my brother got home, he told me, yeah, I'm surprised you got one, because we only had 60. So, there was enough for 8 more people behind me. So I got really lucky with this thing, and I'm super happy because I think just having an official way to play Star Fox 2 is a big deal to me. And of course, Secret of Mana and Earthbound. And also, just Super Nintendo stuff's pretty awesome. But that was sort of how I got my Super Nintendo Classic, and I've been sitting on it in my room, not doing anything because I need to wait till everyone else goes to bed because I live with a bunch of loud people to record this, so I've just been sitting here not doing anything about it, and it's driving me crazy. So, at least I get to play this. Since we're still not in Star Fox 2 yet, Gundam Versus came out today. I picked that up just to support more Gundam games in the West. And if you've seen my Gundam Breaker 3 video, you kind of know how I would feel about it. And the game was about as disappointing as I figured it would be. So that's fun. But I've been really excited to play this because this is a big deal to me. I love the Super Nintendo being able to play it again in a slightly more official capacity than on the Retron 5 with actual carts, I guess. It's big to me, and of course I just love playing Secret of Mana, so having another way to play it never hurts. But Star Fox 2 is definitely a reason that I absolutely wanted to get this, and it is because it's a huge deal just from an archival standpoint, because that game has existed for about 20 years, and in that 20 years it has never been made officially available. Like, sure, you could get it off pirate carts, sure you could, download it online, and prior to this, that's kind of a reasonable thing to do because it wasn't officially available in any real capacity. But now that that's the case, I think you kind of have to go after one of these things. Even though it is kind of like a rare collectible thing, I guess, now. But Star Fox 2 was a really interesting game to exist because, and we'll get into like the history now because why not? I'm running out of things to talk about. They made Star Fox, and it was a big deal. It pushed the hardware. They had to create their own unique chips and stuff for it to run this 3D stuff. That's what the Super Effects stuff came from, of course. So, Star Fox came out, and it was a big hit. And people were saying, well, we need a sequel to Star Fox, which is a reasonable thing to do when you make a game that's popular, is, make something more from this popular idea. And Star Fox 2 was being made. It never got completely finished, and the number I've heard, it kind of varies wildly, but I've heard as high as like it was 98% finished. They needed to finish coding like something for a multiplayer mode, and they had to put in like a title screen or something. But Star Fox 2 was almost completed and then completely shelved, and the reason why is, as I understand, we should be able to reset, so just pardon the loud audio for just a scooch. And let's open this bad boy up. The world premiere on my channel of opening Star Fox 2. That is a badass cover, and it looks nothing like any of the other artwork because it's like completely new artwork. Like, look at that. That looks like a clay model with like fur attached to it. That looks anime style. Like, even comparing that to Mega Man X, that just... This very clearly looks like it was designed by someone, like, a year ago. Or, like, taken off a DeviantArt page or something. But, the reason why it was shelved, I've heard, is... It varies from person to person, but the most consistent story I've heard is... Miyamoto, like, just put his foot down and said, look, we're gonna have this N64 thing coming out, we're gonna make a Star Fox game for it. I want there to be more of a wow factor for it coming out. So we're gonna completely put this thing on hold, which is basically just Star Fox but better, so that we can come up with this new Star Fox that's gonna blow everything out of the water. And then it turned out to kind of sort of vaguely be a remake of the first game. At least the first level was, anyway. But this is Star Fox 2, a game that is completely different and yet still the same game, kind of. I played a little bit of it through a unofficial cart I've got. And, well, let's show you. So let's go through mission. We'll go normal, because challenges and stuff, we're not here for any of that. We're here for first impressions. Here's, what's his name? The guy who was in a cube because he blew up that one time. And now, suddenly, we've got a much nicer looking map. Yeah! And also missiles flying towards things. Missiles flying towards Corneria, I believe. Oh yeah, Andros. I was thinking Andrew, that's his nephew or whatever. Not introduced until... Actually, this game, I think Star Wolf was actually introduced in Star Fox 2. Yes. So, if I recall correctly, those missiles move in real time to hit Corneria, so you have to intercept them and go into various other, like, planets and take over slowly towards Andross's fortress. That's a huge difference from the first game. But here's another. You have to pick your team. Because not only do you have Fox, Falco, Peppy, and Slippy, you now have Miyu, who is, on record, probably the single coolest Star Fox character, and Faye, who... I have no idea who this is. I think it's the General's niece or something. But what's interesting is you can kind of see their R-Wings all look very, like, a little bit different. Like, you know, you got Fox with the standard R-Wing, Falco's got the red one. Well, the difference between the two is they're the same, just a different color, right? Well, next you've got Peppy's, who looks completely different than Fox or Falco's. And that's because this thing also ended up inspiring that, I think it was the DS Star Fox game? I'm not gonna lie, the only Star Fox games I played were the N64 one and the 2 GameCube ones, which were terrible. But this inspired the DS games, which every ship is kind of different. So you've got Falco and Fox, which have the sort of average R-Wing. You've got Peppy and Slippy, who have like the big, slow, heavy thing that might have like better weapons, and can take a better beating, but it's a lot slower. And then you've got Miyu and Faye, who have the sleeker, slightly less punchy ship, but it's a lot faster and a lot more maneuverable. Anyway, we gotta pick our team of 2, so we're gonna go with Falco because he's the man, and I guess we're going with Slippy, except no we're not, we're going with Miyu because she's the best. Because screw Slippy. I would rather deal with the Poodle than Slippy, and I don't like the Poodle either. But I like Miyu. I don't like the fact she was shelved from every other Star Fox game, although you could say she, was sort of revived in 64 with Cat, if that matters to you. Okay, so you can swap with your wingman, you can return to the mothership, and basically it's sort of RTS interception meets going to planets and fighting stuff. It's definitely a lot different. But what's also different about this game is it feels a lot more open world and like full 3D controls, sort of like the all-range mode in Star Fox 64. So that's our first mission. We just intercepted some guys in 3D. Sort of like the asteroid field of the first game. I'm going to pretend I know what I'm talking about, because I haven't played much of the first game, actually. Let's go fight the carrier, because variants in missions. That looks very Star Wars-y. That's very reminiscent of the Star Destroyer. And let's get motoring. Oh, hey, this guy. This guy needs to be blown up, I think. And now we're shooting at this thing. But this game has some really neat features, and I'm not going to leave until I show you at least one specific feature. After that, I don't care, but there's one thing in specifically I want to show you. So now we gotta do like a Death Star trench run style mission. I love the transitioning camera. You gotta shoot the doors. Grab the coins, which, if I recall, in the original game did nothing. As I understand, this version on the Super Nintendo Classic, they actually added like unlockables in the game for collecting all of them. How flipping cool is that? And here we go. The R-Wing turns into a flipping mech. And it's a little awkward to control. You have to turn with the shoulder buttons. But other than that, it pretty much controls like the standard R-Wing. And you know, this blew my goddamn mind the first time I heard Star Fox 2 had mechs. Like, what is this noise? Well, I'll tell you what this noise is. It's flippin' awesome is what it is. And I gotta say, that might be the inspiration for like the Landmaster or whatever. But let's just be completely honest, the Landmaster sucked. Mechs are badass. I mean, oh, go save Slippy, he's on a desert planet. You can go run around in a tank and shoot a giant cactus. No. Give me a mech, please. Mechs are cool. I wanna go here. Can I go here? I don't think I can go here. Let's go intercept these guys. Can I make it? Nope, I can't, but I can intercept these guys. And then maybe I can swing by that station before it shoots. But yeah, this game sort of has like a real-time strategy aspect to it too, which makes it a hell of a lot more deep than the original Star Fox, which was just like really a tech demo proof of concept rail shooter. And this kind of takes it off rails a little bit, makes it a little more open, makes it a lot deeper, gives you some options, gives you some interesting variance in gameplay depending on who you play as in your strategy. And I just have to ask, why the hell did this not come into like an actual game? Why was this shelved? Oh, that intercepts them for us. That's cool. And here we go. Star Wolf. The introduction of them that never happened because they showed up in the N64 one where we all pretended they already existed. Even though, as I recall, they didn't exist in the original, I don't think. I think this was their inception. Again, basing this off of the one time I played Star Fox, the original when I was a kid, was at a neighbor's house where he threw me into like a training mode, which was like a first-person area that had nothing in it. I'm not sure if his cart glitched or anything, but I just flew around for 5 minutes and there was nothing around me and I got bored and never really saw an interest in playing Star Fox again. And also, I never found a shop that had it to rent. But I gotta say, if you threw this game in front of me when I was a kid, I would have probably exploded with joy. I mean, it's got awesome spaceships, it's got mechs, it's got various different aspects of gameplay. There is nothing to not like about this game. And the only reason this game never came out, aside from the fact, you know, it was like 2% incomplete, was the fact that I guess Nintendo didn't want to have their game conflict with another game they released. And the thing is, I can kind of understand not wanting to have a brand new... Also, we're going to go fight a dragon, by the way, which is awesome. I can understand not wanting to have, you know, your own competition with yourself. Which is why you don't, like, ever see 2 Marvel movies released at the same time. Like, it doesn't make sense to have your own audience compete with themselves. But the thing is, with hardware, you're always going to run into people who can't upgrade to the new hardware because it's expensive. I mean, you know, hardware is sold with the razor and blade strategy of they take a cut off the profits of hardware and sell it cheap, but make their money back on software. But that doesn't mean that hardware is necessarily cheap to the average person. It's still pretty expensive. So you're going to run into people who will not upgrade either because they can't afford to or just out of principle. They won't because they don't see value in it. Like, I won't upgrade to a new console until there's like 5 games out there for me that interest me. Hence why I'm only picking up a Switch now, as opposed to, you know, like 6 months ago when it came out originally. But it just seems dumb that you actively just sort of ignore revenue just because you want to make people more excited about how far you've advanced in terms of design of technology. Like, that just blows my mind that someone would say, oh yeah, we got this thing that is done, let's not release it. Although, to be fair, if this, as I understand, is like completely Miyamoto's decision, he was also the guy who basically put down Donkey Kong Country, saying that game was a complete fad, would never catch on. Donkey Kong Country was a big deal back then, and I still consider it a big deal now. Donkey Kong Country is awesome. I mean, not as good as the second one, which, talking about the Super Nintendo Classic here, why is Donkey Kong Country 2 not on here? Or 3? I mean, I think part of it is the fact that they shoehorned themselves into a corner when they limited themselves to 21 with this game. 21 games on the console. But there's so many games they could have had on here, like Chrono Trigger. There's no Chrono Trigger. Or, you want to talk about something that's completely baffling? You've got Kirby Superstar, which makes a lot of sense. That's a necessity for any Super Nintendo collection. But you don't have Kirby's Dream Land 3, which would have been fine, but they still felt the need to add a second Kirby's game in Kirby's Dream Course, which was just a weird choice. Because Kirby's Dream Course, I mean, it's not a bad game, it's a neat little golf meets like billiard style game, but why not have the swan song of the system, Kirby's Dream Land 3, which, if you've never played, but you've played Kirby 64, was basically proto-Kirby 64 and was awesome. Like, that just comes across as a really baffling decision as to why you would ever make that call. Granted, so is the idea that you have to have 20 games on here. I'm sure you could fit a lot more. I mean, hell, I've seen people selling the NES Classic on eBay that they've hacked and thrown literally every Super Nintendo, NES, TurboGrafx, and Genesis game on. So, you know, it's not like they couldn't have done it. They just chose to shoehorn themselves in with, like, 20 games. 21 with this, of course. But, I don't know, that just seems like a weird choice. Like, Street Fighter seems like a weird choice to be on here, too. Like, I know people would consider that to be a big game, but that doesn't seem like all that necessary a Super Nintendo game. Like, Secret of Mana, that's a big game for me, but I could see that one being shelved for Chrono Trigger, because honestly, Secret of Mana has not aged super well, and I can say that. I can take off my rose-tinted glasses and say that about one of my favorite games, but the choices for this thing and the fact that they decided to just limit themselves to 20 games was a weird choice. And it's not like it would have taken that long to develop this thing. It's not like they had to spend... It's not like they would have had to have spent so much more having to cram one extra ROM onto the thing, or like a dozen extra ROMs or anything, because all the development time for these things was basically just to make the physical design of it. Because, honestly, this thing runs on the exact same system as the NES Classic. Like, it has the exact same interface. They've changed, like, nothing about it. So it's just weird. Wow, Pigma. Huh. But yeah, the Super Nintendo Classic, it's cool, and I like it more than the NES Classic, and the NES Classic was the second coolest Christmas gift I've ever received, of the very few games I've ever received, because my family, growing up, always had a sort of embargo on them. Like, you want to talk about that for just a sec? My family was so, like, con video games that when my grandpa saw me looking at a game for, like, $1 at a GameStop, because it was, like, used, and it was one I'd always been looking for, he went back and really super cool, bought it, and then got it for me for my birthday. It wasn't expensive or anything, I just didn't have money at the time. My parents would not... My parents gave me, like, unmitigated shit for, like, a month because of that. And it's sad, but, yeah, the NES Classic was an amazing gift. And the SNES Classic, it's pretty good, and, you know, it's... Yeah, I'll continue as my wingman, sure. She was the best wingman, why not? But, yeah, this game is just awesome, and from an archival perspective alone, I think that makes this a worthwhile purchase. Even though, I will admit, I was surprised to find this game actually cost more than the standard NES Classic. Because the NES Classic, which, again, my brother bought for me, but he got it with, like, a, like, pro arcade stick and stuff. That cost about $100 combined for him. This whole thing cost me about $105. So, this was more expensive, and that was a bit surprising to me. I mean, I don't mind paying more. I like the Super Nintendo, and I'm gonna probably spend more time with the Super Nintendo, because these are the games I played the most growing up, but it just came across as a bit of a shock that it would cost about $20 more than the base the base NES Classic, you know? Oh, I got a shield. Awesome. But, yeah, this game's pretty good. The SNES Classic, I think, is a pretty good deal, even though it's got some bizarre design choices and decisions in its development. And, I can see myself having a lot of fun with this just in my spare time. I can see myself making some videos on this. I mean, I'm doing it right now. Hopefully I'll have a little bit better luck with this. Nintendo's been known to copyright, like, all the video games I've done videos for, which is why you don't ever see any of them on my channel. But, hopefully Star Fox isn't that badly, released. I know Kirby isn't. But, my cynical views on Nintendo not really caring much about Kirby aside doesn't hurt my feelings. It means I get to talk about my favorite pink, puffball. But, I think we've definitively proven what Star Fox 2 is. It's a game that took 20 years to finally be completed, lost 2% so we could finally see it. And sure, it's way more expensive than it probably should be. But you know, I like it. It's way better than Star Fox 1. And honestly, if I may throw that dark horse out there, I think I like this better than Star Fox 64, honestly. But this has been what Star Fox 2 is. It's an improvement on the original. It does some really bold, really interesting things. And I could see myself diving really deep into this just because of how different it is and how different strategies you could employ. Going after different targets, picking different units, picking a different wingman, thanks Brain. And, you know, it's fun. And I think that about the Super Nintendo Classic as well. Anyway, I will see you next time. Peace out, Internet.